Hello everyone. We will talk about image alignment now. We spoke about alignment, for example, fitting transformations. And what we did was we had a noisy set of points and we fitted a line to those points, least squares or total least squares. Whatever the method that we used, we had some residual that we were able to compute given this set of points and the transformation that we are supposed to estimate. We call it a model. Now we can go further. We can fit models to find the transformation between pairs of features. Now in this diagram you can see a set of 2 points xi and xi prime. So you can see point matches have already been found. That means we know that this point matches with this point and so on. So what we are interested in is finding this transformation T that would transform the first image onto the second and vice versa. So the problem is given matches x1, x1 prime up until xn, xn prime, find the transformation T that minimizes some residual between xi prime and the transformed xi. So when we find this transformation, we must have these xi's landing on top of their corresponding xi primes. That's the idea. So you can see it is an alignment. So in this, we will first of all see why we need this alignment by looking at some problems. Then we will see how to fit these transformations, particularly an affine transformation and the homography. And then we will see how to do a robust alignment, and it is up to you to find out about large scale alignment. So this finds applications in panorama stitching. What that means is you have several images of the same scene. You can see it's the same scene here, the same mountain range, but different viewpoints. And we want to put, for example, the second image on top of the first one. So this kind of alignment. So, the phones and so on have this function, panorama auto stitching function. So we want to be able to do that. That's one of the applications. And aligning contemporary and historic images is one of them. So you can see the background is the contemporary or the current image, and in the center we have the historic image. Same here. So if we are able to match the points between the historic image and the contemporary image, we would be able to find this transformation and do the alignment. And instance recognition is also one of the alignment tasks. Here you can see there are these query images, model images. What we want to do is to compute some features and their so-called descriptors, which are like signatures, and see how these points transform together corresponding to a common transformation. For example, if you take this toy car here, sorry about that. If you take the toy car here, we can see that the points that are on the toy car align with the toy car in the full image with a certain transformation. So same in regard to these totem pole images. Yeah. And then instance recognition. So we have a query image and how to recognize instances of the same object and so on. So this is the Notre Dame Cathedral, and then many views of that and so on. Yeah. So this can also be done by using these features, their descriptors, and then querying. So the large number of images in this case is the question actually, particularly in this case, large scale reconstruction. This paper is called Building Rome in a Day. So they collected millions of images of the same scene taken by many users and who have uploaded those images. And they computed these shift features on them, and then large scale feature matching was the question there. Then after that, they have been able to align and make a 3D reconstruction. Yeah, so let's see more about this feature-based alignment. We have to find a set of feature matches that agree in terms of local appearance and geometric configuration. So local appearance means that if you take a feature and assume that this is the sort of the window that corresponds to that feature, a smaller window than that, and should match with this window in some context. Maybe we can take pixel-wise matches, which is not very good. We will show that later. Or we can describe this window using a thing called a descriptor that's like a signature, and then we can match the local appearance. And then there is this geometric configuration that all the features that we match like that should transform onto the second image conforming to a common transformation. Yes. Then if you do that, we would be able to do this image stitching, for example. And this we have seen before. So this is one of the images taken by a rover. So this area, where is this in the actual large scale image? It is right here. Because of the features, we have been able to do this localization. Otherwise, for the human eye, it is not possible. And you can see this feature-based alignment, the feature meshing based on their signatures can handle viewpoint and lighting variations. That means photometric transformations also. You can see there's a clear difference between lighting between the first image and the second. Yeah, so now we are done with the motivation. So now we will see actually how to fit these transformations, starting with the fine and going on to homographies. Okay, you can see now when we are given matches, x1 matches with x1 prime, xn matches with xn prime, and so on. Of course, in this case, x1 is two-dimensional point, x1 and xy1. Yeah. Find transformation T that minimizes the residual between the transformed xi's and xi prime, so all the points. So we transform xi to xi prime and so on through this T. So what are the kinds of transformations that exist and that we can find? Now there are several classes, and this is from this famous multiple view geometry book by Hartley and Zimmerman. Class 1 is called isometry. So we will see examples of those. So here you can see, forget about these epsilons, cos theta minus sine theta minus cos theta, and there is tx and ty, and you can see tx and ty are the translation parameters in x direction and in y direction. Why? Because when we do this multiplication, cos theta multiplies with x, minus sine theta multiplies with y, tx multiplies with x. So when you compute the new x coordinate x prime, you have x cos theta minus y sine theta plus tx. So you can see tx is a translation in x direction and ty is a translation similarly in the y direction. So when we think about this matrix R, R transpose R is equal to I, and that is actually called an orthogonal matrix. Actually, they are, in this case, they are orthonormal. That means their magnitude is also 1 if you take cos theta sine theta vector and minus sine theta cos theta vector. So when epsilon is equal to 1, it's called a Euclidean transformation. When epsilon becomes minus 1, there can be reflections. There are reflections. So we will see examples of those. And then we have the class 2 similarity transformations. Now, if you take this one without epsilon being negative 1, you can see you can add a scale here, S in front of all these coordinates, all these numbers, and then you will not only rotate and translate this object, but you will scale it also. Scale equally in x direction and y direction. So you can see it's SR, T is this vector, and 0 transpose y, 1. Yeah. Then class 3, fine. So in Euclidean transformations, when epsilon is equal to 1, you can see the parameters like length and angles do not change. That means if you take a square, that square will rotate and translate. The 90-degree angle will not change. The length of sides will not change. But if you take a similarity, the angles will remain, but the length of the lines will change of the square. So it can scale. But if you take affine, the angles can also change, but the line parallelism will remain. So your square, when transformed, can become a rhombus. So in this case, the matrix A is a 2 by 2 non-singular matrix. And of course, the zero vector translation and 1, they do remain. Then the final class is projective transformations. So there you can see it's specified by actually 8 parameters because it is up to a scale. So this A no longer are the zeros in the bottom row are zeros. They have a non-zero vector here. You can see that. Okay, so we will see how they arise in actual images. So you can see this one is a similarity. What that means is in the picture, the size of these tiles is not equal to the exact size, right? So the similarity transformation has taken place. When you take a fine, the tiles do not look like squares. They have become rhombuses. Line parallelism remains. If you take projective, the line parallelism do not remain any longer. So you can see here, these two lines, you can see they are still parallel here. The parallelism is gone here because they will eventually meet in the top right direction somewhere. So another pair of lines, so you can see here the angles are 90. The 90-degree angles are gone due to the affine transformation. In the perspective transformation, even the line parallelism is not retained. Of course, the angles, length, and so on change. So length change is not homogeneous across the image in a projective transformation. You can even decompose this projective transformation to like so. So it is up to you to study about this more. Um, so let's look at how the number of degrees vary. So if you take a Euclidean transformation, you have Tx, Ty, and the rotation angle, right? Three parameters that can change, Tx, Ty, and rotation angle. So therefore, number of degrees of freedom is 3. So we will not talk about these items. Uh, in this case, ratio of lengths and angles do not change due to similarity. So you can see the ratio of lengths is just the scale S. So you can see a rectangle can become a smaller rectangle. A fine parallelism, ratio of areas, ratio of lengths on collinear parallel lines, and so on. So these are the things that do not change. So you can see a rectangle can become a parallelogram in this case. Remember here also, these two zeros remain zeros, zeros, zeros. In this case, it is just these are just numbers. So if you take a projective 8-degree of freedom transform, concurrency, collinearity, order of contact, and those things remain. So I encourage you to read about this if you are interested about this. Okay, so now let's look at how to affect some of these transformations. Okay, so here you can see I have defined 1, 2, 3, 4 points 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, and 1, 0. See, also you can see that to define a 2D point in the Cartesian plane, I'm using 3 numbers. So you can see the last number we use to affect the translation. So we will keep that kind of understanding for now and proceed further. Of course, when we study about projective geometry, we will study about these so-called homogeneous coordinates in more detail. So I have concatenated them together and then define an angle theta, 60 degrees, and a translation 2 and 1, and epsilon I kept as 1. We can change the data, and the scale factor S. So first of all, isometries with epsilon is equal to 1. It's a Euclidean transformation. So what I do is I define this transformation matrix, what you saw on the slides, cos theta minus sin theta, cos theta, and 0, 0, 1, and tx and ty over here. So when you multiply this set of points x, there are 4 points there, with h pre-multiply, then you will get y1. To get the Cartesian coordinates back, you have to divide this by the last row. Okay, then I do the similarity. Now we have S here. So S is equal to 0.1. So I'm actually scaling it down. So the same scenario in computing the coordinates and then transforming them, changing them back to Cartesian coordinates. And affinity or the affine transformation, you can see 1.5.7, 1.2 is just a non-singular matrix, and the translations are there 0, 0, 1 again. Then you do the same operation. Homography, so it's an arbitrary matrix here. So I didn't have to do this translation here, but that's okay. So you multiply and then divide by the last coordinate. So then what I do is I plot all these things. So here you can see the plot. This is the original square that we defined. So then we effected a Euclidean transformation. So you can see rotation and translation has happened. This origin, which I signify by a dot, from 0, 0 has moved to 2, 1 because that was the translation we had. The translation vector was 2, 1. Then the similarity scaling down because S was equal to 0.5, and then the affinity. So you can see the lines are still parallel. So these two lines, if you take, they are still parallel. But if you take the homography, the line parallelism is also gone. So just to see the reflection, we will set epsilon equal to -1 and run this. So you can see now there has been a reflection. So let's put the rotation angle 0, otherwise we won't be able to see it. Put the rotation angle as 0 and run this. So you can see here the dot is over here, and the translation has happened. Reflection has happened. Okay, now let's see how to compute these transformations. And so the simple fitting procedure is linear least squares, approximates viewpoint changes for roughly plane objects and roughly orthographic cameras, can be used to initialize fitting of more complex models. Now let's fit an affine transformation. So assume we know the correspondences, then how do we get the transformation? That's the question. So we know that means this red point matches with this red point and so on, we know, and we want to find the affine transformation. So you see, since the last rows, 2 zeros are there, we can write the transformation in this fashion. So think about this. So M1, M2, M3, M4, T1, T2 are the parameters that we have to estimate. That means there are 6 numbers that we have to estimate. So what we do is if we know M and T, we can minimize this error. So how this point gets transformed onto that point and what is the error that is created, and then we can square it and we can sum it and we can minimize that to find M and T. So in reality, what we do is we get all the points together, and we get this M1, M2, M3, M4, T1 and T2 as the vector that we need to find, and then x1, y1, 0, 0, 1, 0. So you can see that's what we get here. X1 multiplies with m1, that's why m1 is here. Y1 multiplies with m2, and then t1 is there. So that is my xi prime. My yi prime is like so. Xi multiplies with m3 and so on. So I think you can understand due to one point match how we get these two equations. So we can take multiple point matches because there are 6 parameters, and due to 1 point we get 2 equations. We will need at least 3 point matches to find an affine transformation. So that's the answer to that, 3. Then we will see later how to find this transformation mathematically, computationally. So when you think about a homography, it's a planar projective transformation taking a quad to another arbitrary quad. That's what we saw, line parallelism and so on is gone due to this projective transformation. So how do homographies actually arise in the world? So you can see if you have a wall or something like that, these are called graffiti images. You take two pictures from different viewpoints, they arise. the transformation between two views of the planar surface. And then the transformation between images of two cameras that share the same center. That means you keep the camera on a tripod and rotate and take two pictures. The relationship between these two images is a homography. The relationship between these two images is a homography. So when you do panorama stitching, you usually keep the camera on a tripod and then rotate, and while rotating you take pictures and you can stitch them together. So when we briefly think about these 2D homogeneous coordinates, we have Cartesian coordinates and we convert them to so-called homogeneous coordinates x, y, and 1 by adding a 1 there. So the significance of these things and this significance of the last coordinate and so on, we will talk about when you study projective geometry. Right now, we can just think that when we have x, y, and w to get the Cartesian form, we have to divide by the last number. So that's what I did in the Python code also that I showed you. So the equation of the homography is like this. So x, y, and 1 is there, and then h11, h12, and so on are the 9 parameters of the homography. Only 8 are important. You get x prime, y prime, and 1, and there's an unknown parameter, unknown scale, lambda. So we can write it in this fashion. H is the symbol that we use for the homography. Lambda x prime is equal to hx. Constraint from a match is this. So to get rid of this lambda, we can do this so-called cross product trick. So what we do is we take the cross product with the xi prime. So when we get the cross product between xi prime and lambda xi prime, it's the same vector. That means parallel vectors. The cross product between parallel vectors is 0, 0, 0, 0. So you have the 0 here. So then you have this expression. So we have gotten rid of lambda. So now this is how you express the cross product between two three-dimensional vectors. So with the same idea, we can take xi prime and hxi. So hxi we can take as taking h1 transpose, h2 transpose, h3 transpose as rows of rows of h. Then you can see that you get this. You can get this expression in this form, and when you get the cross product by looking at this, you have this form. Yes. Okay, so this is the simplification that we can do. Then we have to take h1, h2, h3. h1 has 3 numbers. Remember, h2 has 3 numbers, h3 has 3 numbers, and so on. And this is the expression that we get. So this is a system. Here now you have 1, 2, 3 equations. Not all these are independent. So only 2 are linearly independent. So then when we put all these points together, x1, x2 up until xn, you will have this system of equations. So h equals 0. So an obvious solution is all zeros for h. If you put all zeros for h, you get the so-called trivial solution, but that's not what we want. To solve it, we have to do homogeneous least squares. That means find it minimizing h norm squared. The solution is the eigenvector of A transpose A corresponding to the smallest eigenvalue. We can use SVD to solve this. So there we can assume that the magnetic norm squared of H is equal to 1 because we can arbitrarily set a scale. So what is the minimum number of matches needed for a solution for A? A has 8 degrees of freedom, 9 parameters, but scale is arbitrary. One match gives 2 linear independent equations. So therefore, we need 4-point matches. Yes. So now let's see how to find this homography. Before that, I will show you how to transform an image onto the other given the homography. So with these graffiti images which are available here, we have graffiti image 1 and graffiti image 2, and they have given the homographies also. So what I did was I read the homography in to H. Then OpenCV has a function called warp perspective. Using that, I can warp image 1 onto image 2's frame. So if we run this, you would be able to see the first image, second image, and we can you can see it has been transformed, but you won't be able to see because the windows are resized. that it has actually been transformed. Image 1 transformed to image. So once again, the inverse of H, if we compute, that would transform second image onto the first. So we can see that. So you can see the first image, the second image. Now the second image has been transformed onto the first image. There is a color problem here though. Okay. So let's compute the homography using mouse click points. So I have a function that would allow me to click and then obtain those points. So those points are in P1 and P2, and using P1 and P2, we use OpenCV's find homography function to find it. Let's try that. So you have to carefully click the points. If you just click, now this program has been designed to obtain, I think, 4 or 5 points. Usually the homography is not very correct. Actually, so if you click, 5 points or 4 points. Yeah, you had to use the same order of clicking. Yeah, so you can see I not only computed the homography, but I warped the image, so you can see they're sort of, these lines sort of continue, right? So that means our homography estimation is sort of correct, but you can see it's not exactly correct. Okay. So now what we want to do is to do what we did in the slides. That means finding the homography without using the mouse click points. So there, what we saw on the slide was this expression. So we had to have 0 x1 transpose and minus y1 prime times x1 transpose, and so like that we have to gather the rows of matrix A, and then we have to get A transpose A and get the SVD and the eigenvector corresponding to the smallest eigenvalue. So this is exactly what I am doing here. So have a comparison between the slides and this 0 x transpose 0 x transpose 1 x prime, not x transpose, x prime 1 0 x prime 1 and 1, and then x prime yeah, so the first point and the second point. So you can see, I think you can make the relationships between what we saw in the slides and this one. Yeah, you have to spend some time to see that. So I do that for these endpoints that we have gathered. Then after that, I print it, and then I use NumPy's SVD, and I have A transpose A, and then when I compute VH, from of VH I get the last row, which is the eigenvector corresponding to the smallest eigenvalue. And then I print what I computed over there, and then this homography that we can compute using the OpenCV function. So same mouse clicking, I will not show that again. There you can see H hat that has been estimated by us, 6.61 10 to the power minus 1, 6.64 times 10 to the power minus 1, 6.94, 6.92, and so on. So those are correct. Okay. So we have completed that. Now let's see how to do that in a robust fashion, because if we exactly click mouse point using our mouse manually, we know that the points match, but if you use descriptors, the points may not correctly match all the time, because some points may have incorrect matches in the other image. That means we have to do it in a robust fashion. That means getting rid of incorrect matches or the outliers. So far we have estimated that we are given a set of correspondences between the two images we want to align. What if we do not know the correspondences? That's a problem we are asking here. So, we extract the features and then we compute putative matches using the descriptors. So for each of these points that we detect, we assign a signature. We will briefly look at that also. And now these are the putative matches. So you can see, obviously there are incorrect matches. This one is incorrect and so on. So we hypothesize a transformation. That means if we know that it is an affine, we only need 3-point matches. If it is a homography, we need 4-point matches. We hypothesize the transformation using them and see how many people, how many point pairs conform to that or the consensus. Verify the transformation, search for other matches that are consistent with the, and then recompute the transformation with those, and then we can do the alignment. So generating putative correspondences is a problem. So for that, we had to assign feature descriptors to these points that we computed. These points may be Harris corners or um, difference of Gaussian extrema, and so on. So we need to compute feature descriptors for local patches surrounding interest points. So we had to know the difference between feature detection and feature description. Detection means finding points that are interesting to be relocated, and feature description is assigning a signature to each of those points. So the simplest descriptor is a vector of row intensities. Then we can have think that U and V are the row intensities around the point. If you take a 5 by 5 window, 25 numbers in U, 25 numbers in V, and so on. So we can just subtract them, square them, and sum of square difference, and then also normalized correlation. You can see there is a normalization here. So you can think about this expression a little more. So why would we prefer normalized correlation over SSD? Because SSD is affected by the intensity. So if this intensity of first image is high, all the numbers in U will be high. So small deformations can affect the matching score a lot if you just use the intensity. So therefore, that's why we like properly computed descriptors. So one of the very well-known descriptors is the so-called SIP descriptor described in this paper. So divide the patch into 4 by 4 sub-patches, and in each of those sub-patches, we compute the amount of gradient in horizontal direction, angle 0, angle 45, angle 90, like that. Along 8 directions, we compute the gradient strength. And you can see in each of these rectangles, now there are 8 numbers. How many rectangles do we have? We have 4 by 4, 4 by 4, and 4 by 4 times 8 is 128. So each of these shift descriptors is 128 dimensional. So at each of the points that we detect as features, we assign a feature descriptor. So what are the advantages of set descriptor or row pixels? Gradients are less sensitive to illumination changes because we compute gradients there. Pooling of gradients over subpatches achieves robustness to small shifts. So because it's a subpatch, whatever the gradient distribution is in the subpatch, if it is the same, um, even if we slightly change the location at which we estimate the gradient, so therefore there is this robustness. Mm, uh, so each of the patches in one image, we find a short list of patches in the other image that could match it based on solely appearance. That's called generating putative correspondence. For example, if you have F1 here, putative matches can be F2 prime and F2 here. So you can see there is a problem in that. So heuristically, to say that putative matches are reliable, compare distance of nearest neighbors. So that compare the distance of nearest neighbor to that of the second nearest neighbor. So if you want to know more about this, refer to the David Lowe paper, this 2004 famous paper. So there have been things that have been found. So the ratio of distances between probability density, of correct matches versus incorrect matches. Please look at this diagram and perhaps read this paper if you are interested. So the robust alignment means even after filtering out ambiguous matches, the set of putative matches still contains a very high percentage of outliers. So what comes to the solution? Of course, ransack or MLE comes to the solution. In the ransack loop, we randomly select a seed group of matches. So practically we pick four to estimate a homography, four matches, compute the transformation bit from the seed group and find the inliers. And if the number of inliers is sufficiently large, we compute the least squares estimate of the transformation on all the inliers. At the end, keep the transformation with the largest number of inliers. Or we can recompute the transformation using all the inliers. So you can see in this case, you can see there are obviously incorrect matches. So these may be the putative matches. You have to estimate the translation in this case, let's say. So to estimate the translation, we need only one point match, one pair of points. So assume that this blue arrow gives the translation, and we see how many match. So you can see all the greens match the blue. So the number of inliers, so the consensus is high in this case. So these are outliers. So um, this is how we achieve that. Yeah. So I think you understand what we do here. Okay. So thank you. So what we did was we understood what the motivation is for us to do alignment, panorama stitching, and including a historical image to the current image, and then image retrieval. All these things are applications. Then after that, we saw about this hierarchy of transformations, similarities up until projective transformations. And then we saw how to compute them using point matches. And we actually saw once the transformation is available, how to warp the image using warp perspective, then using point matches, how to estimate this homography, and then we estimated the homography using the equations in the slides using SVD, and then we looked at how ransack should be applied in robust machine. Thank you.